This is part 8 of a 10-part podcast on your electronic health record and taking control of your own health management. Enjoy the episode.
So, where did they come from? Where did this whole thing evolve from? It's not just from thumbsuck, What it actually started off was with the first industrial revolution, right? So, the first industrial revolution, when people changed from doing things with their hands and creating cloth and working with their hands, building and creating everything they created, was done by the hands. And that was transferred in creating machines that starting to weave and started to create new things. And the discovery of the steam power and water power hugely contributed for the first industrial revolution to take place. And it really started in Europe in 1760, more or less. And it went on until 1820 to 1840 in Europe and the United States mainly, right? And the effects was mainly on the textile industry and manufacturing. And suddenly we had clothing, and you could clothe people, and they would like different designs. And oh, what about that color? So it actually driven that. And it was also driven into other industries like iron production and iron manufacturing that brought on new agricultural machines and mining. Now you suddenly don't have to have a spade to mine. Suddenly you have bigger machines that's more powerful, that can dig deeper and wider and more efficiently using less manpower. But it also empowered the middle class to start to rise, because suddenly people could work in these factories, etc. So the first industrial revolution was a very important foundation stone for what we have today as the fourth industrial revolution. So the second industrial revolution, right, is actually known as the technological revolution. It is the period between 1871 and 1914, and it actually resulted from installations of extensive railroads and telegraph networks. And because of that, people could transfer quicker, and they could transfer their ideas quicker. Right? They could converse.
It's the early internet.
The early internet, exactly, on the telephone, exactly that, right? And also with the increasing electrification, new inventions could be made that enabled factories to produce more and higher volumes. And modern production lines were for the first time seen. That wasn't seen before. It is a period of great economic growth, and there was an increase in productivity, but also it caused a lot of unemployment because the machines took over.
Yeah.
And hence the War of the Worlds theme of machine statement Terminator. So guess at what? They also have the conspiracy theories. Even in 1914, they had it. So they could see these things happening, and people resist change as a general rule. Well, that started basically then the Industrial Revolution of the third kind, all right? And that is also known as the Digital Revolution. And this occurred only in the late 20th century, right? And after the ending of the two world wars. And the wars actually created a lot of knowledge, a lot of building, a lot of innovation, creating new weapons and ideas, etc. And that generated a huge amount and then it slowed down after the world wars, and resulted in a lot of unemployment again. But when the digital revolution started, it actually revolutionized the way people think and do things, and the technologies started to evolve, and more people were employed in those technologies, right? And the next significant development in the third industrial revolution was actually in the communication technologies, the mobile phone, how we text, how we could share messages, how we actually advance telephone and mobile onto mobile. But also, very importantly, the first supercomputers were established and built. And with the extensive use of these big computer and computer programming, and communication technologies that sat on top of that, we suddenly see that we have much more power to the people.
Yeah.
People start to benefit from it, and they have increased and improved their health quality of life.
Yeah.
All right. So it added value for them. Right. So what is the fourth industrial revolution then? It's an extension of what already happened in the third industrial revolution, of course. Right. And the interesting history about how the fourth industrial revolution came about actually started with the German Industry 4.0 strategy. And this originated in 2011 from a project in the high-tech strategy of the German government, which promotes the computerization of manufacturing. This is where it all started. How can we do it faster, bigger, better, more effectively, and more cost effectively?
Yeah.
Right. So the term Industry 4 was publicly introduced in the same year at the Hanover Fair. At the Hanover Fair. And the famous German professor Wolfgang Walster is sometimes called the inventor of Industry 4.0. And in October 2012, the Working Group on Industry 4 presented a set of industry implementations recommendations to the German federal government. And what they've basically done is to say, this is how we see the German economy can accelerate, right? And was tested in the field, in industry, right? This working group was headed by none other than Siegfried Dies of Robert Bosch Company and Henning Kagermann, the German Academy of Science and Engineering. And what happened is that what they designed and developed and put into industry actually started to become the gold standard for other industries across the globe. And we just started to follow that example, which was already in place in Germany and was field tested and proved to be solid and valuable. And that's where all these different technologies like the Internet of Things, robotics, blockchain technologies, all of that is evolving actually from this original point.
Okay. It's actually very interesting to listen to that history there, because it's very evident that we're in a very similar place now to what spurred all of these changes, whether it was a world war or a need for something. We've just had a global pandemic, and we're going through, I suppose, over the last 10 years, a real data growth. Something major is changing with the way we live our lives. So it's, if you follow the progression of all these different revolutions and changes, they're driven by a need, they're driven by advances in technology, they're driven by people wanting better quality of life or more effect. So that kind of lends to more confidence in something like artificial intelligence. It's a natural progression of how things have gone. And always, it seems, in every one of these cases, people freak out at the start because it's changing. As you said, people have resistance to change. And I think we're going through that at the moment, where people, maybe not so much the younger generation, but most people 30, 40, 50 who grew up with a certain way, this is very different. Artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency and blockchain and e-commerce and digital this and digital that, and my mom doesn't like to use her phone and all this kind of stuff. That's normal though when you look at the progression from 1 to 4. And it's just the way thing. That's why I say it's an inevitability, really. Thank you for listening to part 8 of this 10-part series. If you'd like any further information on the topics of this podcast, or if you'd like to get involved with the research project, please contact Dr. Sam's team on reception@newacell.com.